I don't know how you feel about this. When I direct something, I'm always imagining an audience and where they are in this moment. And that's sort of my true north, right? And for this, we had to imagine two audiences, a hearing audience and where they are in the moment, and a deaf audience and where they are in the moment. And that's something I'd never experienced.
Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. In this episode, deaf students of Gallaudet University advocate for their school to appoint its first deaf president in directors Nyle DiMarco and Davis Guggenheim's documentary, Deaf President Now. Screened as part of the DGA's documentary series, the film recounts 8 tumultuous days, during which students from the world's only liberal arts school serving the deaf and hard of hearing lead an angry protest to change the course of history. When the University Board of Trustees appoints a hearing president who doesn't know American Sign Language over several qualified deaf candidates, the students take to the streets to speak out. Deaf President Now is DiMarco's and Guggenheim's co-directorial debut, and DiMarco's first feature. Guggenheim's previous directorial credits include the DGA Award-nominated documentary features Waiting for Superman, and Still, a Michael J. Fox movie, the Academy Award-winning documentary An Inconvenient Truth, and episodes of the series The Defenders, Deadwood, 24, and NYPD Blue. Following the documentary series screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, DiMarco and Guggenheim spoke with Director Ondi Timoner about filming Deaf President Now. Listen on for their conversation.
Hello. Another round of applause for Davis Guggenheim and Nyle DiMarco. Please come on up. What an extraordinary film. It's a gift. I'm Ondi Timoner, co-chair of the nonfiction special screening series of special projects. So, first of all,
Perfect.
I really want to know. I've just had dinner with these guys, so this is kind of a joke because they just told me all about their collaboration. But I'm sure you all want to know about their collaboration. Davis has been here. I've interviewed you a couple of times. I'm a huge fan of Davis's films.
I'm a huge fan of yours.
Thank you. So this reminded me of like Waiting for Superman meets Still in a whole other world that you're bringing us. But really, Nyle comes from that world and really was boots on the ground, right. Gallaudet University alum, troublemaker on campus, so I found out.
Guilty as charged.
Can't wait to hear those stories, which you have to repeat for these guys. But tell me about teaming up on this. And you know, for Davis, it's a huge learning experience, and that's why we do what we do. But for you also, it must have been new territory. So
very much so. You know, Deaf President Now is such a personal story to me. I didn't just go to Gallaudet University and learn it. This was something that was passed down within my community, really generation to generation, hand to hand. And I come from an entirely deaf family, so this was very familiar to me. When Davis agreed to co-direct this with me, even from our initial discussions, it was very clear that we wanted to stay true to the theme of Deaf President Now and really pay homage to the work that they did by allowing deaf folks to lead in telling the story on this production. We wanted to give back as much as possible to the community that made this happen. And, you know, co-directing with Davis was such a brilliant experience. It was my first time directing, and I know that it was Davis's first time ever accepting a co-directed project. And there were so many ideas that we pitched to one another, and so many things that we played with, whether it was from the concept of visual noise or the sound design, trying to really force hearing people into a deaf perspective. There were so many things that we pitched while working on this, and so many of those ideas really came down to one simple truth that we realized worked, which was, let's try it, let's experiment, and let's throw it against the wall and see what sticks. And I think we both learned a lot along the way.
Well, while I talk about collaboration, I wanted to give this to you. It's your birthday.
It's your birthday today?
Today's Niall's birthday. And please open it because it's kind of appropriate that your birthday came. What did I miss?
I thought you were going to keep it a secret, Davis. My God.
No.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Nyle. Happy birthday to you.
Is this the right side? Okay.
So it's appropriate that we're at the DGA tonight. This is the viewfinder that I got when I joined the DGA 31 years ago.
What? This one?
That's the viewfinder. So,
oh my goodness.
So it has all the
so cool.
It has all the lenses.
Oh wow.
And the aspect ratios.
But it's lovely because it's so small.
When you're location scouting, you do this.
Mm-hmm.
But you know when and it was just such an incredible experience directing with you now. So I hope I'm gonna quit and you take it and you go for 30 more years.
Thank you so much, Davis. This means so much. Give me a hug.
Oh.
Thank you so much.
When I told my daughter Stella, who was an assistant editor on this movie, that I was thinking about co-directing, she said, "That's a terrible idea. You don't listen to anybody." But I learned how to listen to Nyle because I was a stranger in a strange land, and we couldn't have done it without each other. When you see the movie, there are moments where we go into a deaf perspective. You're in Jerry's room and the door is vibrating, and I'd say, well, what is that like, Nyle? And he would describe it, and then I'd try to interpret that. And there are times when I would say, well, the music is doing this, and I'd try to describe it to Nyle. And we didn't know. We'd have to trust each other that the words we were using could be applied to our own experience. And so we were really like dependent on each other, and it was a beautiful experience. And so, happy birthday. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Davis. Thank you. I'm so honored. This is crazy. Thank you.
I want you guys to tell the story of, sort of a moment, Davis, where you learned something about communication that you didn't know from being on set. Yeah, the bus story.
And then I'll let you tell your version of it. But we were there's a scene where they like students hijack the school bus, and it's night and it's dark because it's night. See how that? And there are like 20 crew members in this bus, and it's noisy and it's dark, and I couldn't hear or see anything. And I look at Nyle, and he's got a flashlight on his hand, and he's doing this. And I look across the bus to Wayne Betts, who's our deaf lens producer, and he's got a flashlight on his hand, and they're just having the easiest conversation. And I say, "Oh, okay, I'm a fish out of water here." And what I started to see is that how cool is it to put the silhouette of ASL on the ceiling of the bus to communicate, and that was Niall's idea. So it was really kind of a wonderful collaboration where, like, as an older director, you think you don't learn anything, but suddenly you're uncomfortable, and then you find things that are pretty magical.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing during production. There were a lot of sort of deaf gain moments, if you will. There was one actually while we were working on the roof of the library at Gallaudet, and the radios for the hearing people went out, and we had an actor who is down on the lawn in the quad, and we had to sort of figure out how to communicate with them. And for me, it was no problem. I just walked over and started signing, and we were able to get through the basic cues and the direction for the scene. And Davis was like, "Oh, we don't need radios. This is great." So sign language definitely has its benefits, and that made itself quite apparent on set. It was a great process, a lot of fun.
We were talking just a few minutes ago about how many people are born to hearing parents versus born to deaf parents. And we were talking about, disabilities in general. And I just thought it was really important to kind of look into, when the president-elect says, well, I'll learn sign language and I'll talk to you guys next week, and they're like, are you kidding me? It's going to take you years. But yet if you're a child, you can learn, but people don't want to. Can you tell us about that, Nyle? Tell us about what it is, the disadvantage that a lot of deaf kids have because they're born to, 90% born to hearing parents?
Yeah, right on the money, 90%. It's funny, there's only 10% of deaf kids out there who are born to families like mine. And 75% of hearing parents with deaf children don't actually choose to sign in the home. Whether that's due to doctors or early intervention who work to really limit those options. There are a lot of reasons why deaf kids are at a disadvantage. Oftentimes they assume that, they'll be able to learn to hear or learn to speak, and that can do a lot of damage. A society of hearing people has a lot of expectations for deaf children and how they should not be accommodated, but instead assimilate and learn to navigate a system that really wasn't built with them in mind. And I think what a lot of people get wrong is that without providing those choices to deaf kids, they lose the agency. But when we do provide language to those deaf kids, they know how to handle their own lives and really make informed decisions. And that was one of the things that the university unfortunately had to learn.
And all 4 of the student leaders were deaf of deaf, which means that their parents were deaf. So they knew deaf culture and they knew ASL from early age. And that gave them this superpower.
Right. And, I will say I do theorize quite often, coming from a deaf generation myself. So I'm 4th generation with over 25 members in my family, and I've seen a lot of change. I do think that the reason those 4 student leaders were so readied for it was because they had seen the trauma of their own generations within their families. I think they had seen the change over the years and the challenges that their family had seen and faced head on and overcome. And I think they saw that was able. I think there were so many other deaf kids who came from hearing families who didn't have that sort of ability to self-advocate and didn't have changes of mindset really within the protest.
So Jerry and his story of being segregated, King and his story of the reverse of, it's really, you really effectively show us what it is to come into your own power, which is something that it's whether it's you're deaf or you're, Black or you're Latino or you're whatever minority and whatever. It's a civil rights story, I feel like, more than anything. And you so effectively do this with this incredible interplay between the archival and the reenactments. Where does this archival come from?
Happy to answer that question. First, we have to say a huge thank you to the brilliance of our editor, Michael Hart, whose heart and soul really went into this film. We were very lucky to find over 40 hours of footage from Gallaudet. And initially we strung that out into 4 hours to see what we had and to see what we'd be able to play up. We were looking for those moments like the best scene where we might be able to build out reenactments and other places where scenes may be necessary for telling the story and capturing a specific moment that may have been true to history, but not necessarily recorded. As well as we played with the idea of the deaf POV and visual noise. We wanted to see exactly how far we could push those techniques. And then once we got to shooting, we started having more ideas in the edit, and certainly we're able to find better areas where we can move things around to give you what you watched tonight.
Nile's twin brother is deaf, and he's a DJ. So they play off this heavy, heavy bass. And what Nyle was telling me is like, people think that deaf people have no relationship to sound. But if you're in your car and you see the side view mirror start to shake, a bus is coming. Or when Jerry's in his room and the door is pounding, you can feel the pressure in the room. These are things, I'm telling you what you taught me. But to answer the recreations, we learned from the last film about Michael J. Fox. We virtually locked picture with storyboards of the recreations. So the picture was almost done. So when we did the recreations, we knew exactly how they played in the film, how many shots we needed, how much time it needed to fill. And so there was no question about how it was going to be used and how that money was going to be spent. And and there's no one better at it than Michael Hart in terms of figuring it, because recreations are so ubiquitous. Thank you. And so often really terribly done. And you're sitting there going, this, anyway, so Michael Hart is brilliant at doing that. And so, ubiquitous.
Yeah. I think, right from the beginning, he and you establish a style of taking us from like really loud sound of the airplane to total silence and really bringing us into that world. And I mean, what fun to be able to play with that. You told us about the sign one, but tell us about some of these other reenactments and actually returning to your university to shoot them, where you were a bit of a rebel rouser, which is, par for the course with this crowd.
Guilty.
Couch surfing and
the swimming pool in the dorm room.
In your dorm room.
We did have a swimming pool in my dorm room
with sand.
I'll admit I was a little bit of a party guy. And, I was asked earlier, if Deaf President Now happened, in today's day and age, would I have been a leader? And I was like, dude, I was partying on the quad. Like, I would have hijacked a bus for sure. But, I was probably hosting a rager in my dorm room. There was one time when we were there that I really wanted to have a pool party. And I just thought, nobody believed that I could do it. And I was like, I will prove you wrong. And I had all these friends show up, and the second they stepped into the hallway of my dorm, they could see I had a 6-foot pool set up with sand, and I was ready to go to the beach. We just drank and swam until the wee hours of the morning. I was a little bit of a crazy college student. I'll be honest.
But it seems like that's par for the course in this place. Like in 1988, before 1988, and before this, I love that line. I thought this was a protest. It was a revolution. Yeah. Before this revolution, I think life probably was very different at that school also. No? And tell me about,
I would agree. I got into Gallaudet in 2007, and it really truly is a mecca. It's the only way to describe it. The students, the teachers, the administration all sign. Even the hearing administration are fluent. And for me, I often refer to it as a utopia, because it just is such a perfect world. It was actually really sad that I had to graduate and go back out to the hearing world. I'll never have that experience again.
That is so beautiful. And founded by Abraham Lincoln. That was an interesting tidbit. But tell us about Abraham Lincoln. And I also want to hear about Alexander Graham Bell while we're talking about famous people.
Abraham Lincoln actually signed it. It was actually founded by 2 hearing guys, if you can believe. The university was founded by a guy named Thomas Minor Gallaudet, and Abraham Lincoln at the time is who signed it in 1863. Signed it in as a college, which is amazing. I mean, if you ever have a chance while you're in DC to visit the campus, you should. It's absolutely beautiful, as you've seen in the film.
Yeah.
And then tell us about Alexander Graham Bell. That was such a fascinating part of the story, which apparently the hearing world doesn't know, but the deaf world knows totally. Yeah.
So, I will say our biggest foe in the deaf community is Alexander Graham Bell, which a lot of people are surprised to find out. People assume he invented the telephone. It was so great. He was a villain. Okay. Technically, he stole the patent for the telephone in the first place from an Italian immigrant. He came from old money that he decided to ride on and ruin people's lives with. And, he invested and supported so many ideas that were incredibly harmful. He focused very heavily on not allowing deaf people to marry one another, the banning of sign language globally. And he used his wealth and his influence in very, very disparaging and harmful ways. I was actually very happy that Davis and I were able to find a way to weave the Bell story into this, even though what you're seeing is just a small snippet that really scratches the surface. I think it plants a seed by informing you of some of his most basic ideas that really have a very long history of harm to our community.
Davis, what was the biggest challenge for you in this? You're the one conducting the interviews. Yeah. So, and tell me about that. How did that work together?
We talked at dinner about this, that if these 4 characters knew Nyle and his family really well, and that if they were talking to me, they would have to tell it from the start. You know how you have a family friend or and they're just like, you know that story already. So I was acting like the ignorant. Well, I wasn't acting. I was ignorant. Truly. Look, I think the revelation for me is that it's not enough to have good intentions. You know, when people talk about Spillman, they said she's a very nice woman who cared a lot about Gallaudet and the deaf community, but she had good intentions, and her good intentions really did a lot of damage. And Amanda Rilke, who's one of the producers, and I would keep saying to each other, let's not be Spillman, meaning, you know, Nyle and I'll still show up to Q&As and someone will hand him a microphone. That's not someone being mean. They're just ignorant, you know, and that's how we stepped in it all the time. And so that feeling of like really not truly, it's like, well, I got great intentions. Like I like deaf people, but if you don't really know, and you don't really truly want to understand and fully immerse yourself in a culture, you're gonna do what Spillman did. And so that was the hardest, is feeling comfortable being uncomfortable and using that uncomfortability to help tell the story. And I always tried to, like, I acted more like a midwife in this process. Like, this is Nile's baby, you know, and I was helping him tell the story. I've been part of a lot of births, but really, you gestated it, you carried it, and you got to raise it. So yours, you know.
Listen, I'm up for the challenge of fatherhood. Let's go.
Yeah, for the teenage years. Sorry.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. The interviews were actually one of the most fun things I think that we got to do. But it goes back to essentially our first meeting when we set up a Zoom call with the 4 student leaders to get some of the preliminary questions out of the way and understand a bit of the structure. We asked about conflicts and disagreements and differences of opinions. And they said, no, it was perfect. We all loved each other. It was great. It was, you know, we were in unity at all times. And we were like, did you think you would win? And they were like, of course we did. We thought it was, we were like, that's not the movie. And also, because I come from a deaf family who knew about their inner rumblings, I was like, you guys, that's not true. So I told Davis, I think it would be better if we got them one-on-one and really tried to go for vulnerability and really get the truth. So I actually hid out in Video Village while Davis, as he mentioned, sat face to face with them. And it was nice because having the language barrier allowed for a new layer of vulnerability where I could see that they were holding things back. I could see that there were moments where they were ready to move forward and really get deeper with some of it. And so I would text Davis and I'd say, there's a moment of weakness. Let's capitalize on it. Capitalize on it.
How does Greg sign? And then Jerry says, I said, how does Greg sign? And Jerry's like, he signs really small. I'm like, so you know, now they knew it all, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that collaboration was fantastic. And there were certainly moments where there would be something interesting, you know, that they'd be ready to sort of go off on a tangent. And, you know, it was really nice to be able to be in Davis's ear. You know, it was great. Felt like a spy sometimes.
I was really touched by Greg's story of being in the classroom and not being able to understand the teacher. Did you ever have experiences like that yourself?
Yeah. So I went to deaf schools my entire life, but in 5th grade, I wanted to check out a public school. And, you know, Deaf President Now, because it gave rise to the passage of the ADA, allowed me the right to have an interpreter at will whenever I needed. But it wasn't the same experience by any means. You know, they were with me all the time. And, you know, if I wanted to make friends and socialize and share secrets and things, I always had this like weird professional adult with me, you know, and it definitely made things much harder. It's a very weird experience.
It's a buddy movie. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
How did you get that archival?
The archival.
Yeah, of Greg in the classroom and all of that.
Well,
like that was incredible.
Yeah, we were very lucky in that, you know, we asked the 4 student leaders what they had of their own archival. And, you know, Greg was in theater throughout his education. So he had quite a bit of it, and we were very lucky to get it.
I mean, overall, looking at the archival, it feels like there was a filmmaker present at the school. I mean, it's so incredibly well documented. I almost never seen anything like it.
We haven't talked about this, but like they had a film crew there. It was just like unbelievable, and the video was quite good. The sound was terrible. We haven't talked about it, but it was like,
I'm sure.
I was like, who's doing sound? I'm like, oh, okay, yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So, but in this the archivist at Gallaudet said, I have all this stuff, and a lot of it was dusty under boxes and stuff, and we transferred it all. And one of the teachers just went home every night and recorded the news on a VHS. So we just had these VHSs and so we got it from, and it's, believe me, when we did the color timing, it was like, this, will anyone accept this? Because some of it's really, really crappy. But what we learned is that people don't, when they're in it, they, I don't know how you guys felt, but when you're in it, you look past it because you're in the moment.
It's so dramatic. Yeah. It's so incredible. And the way you artfully crafted, King throwing them under the bus and leaving and abdicating his role and then turning back around, it's when nonfiction becomes better than anything you could write, it's that story.
Thank you.
That you dream to make, Thank you. Yeah. And
100%. It's funny. I grew up knowing the story of Deaf President Now, but I didn't know how much I. King Jordan was teetering, and how much he had to balance. I mean, that footage really became a gold mine. And once that was shared with us, it was something new that I learned in the process of making this project.
And how was he? How was his interview? Was he
great?
Yeah. Did he have to be drawn out, like in terms of, was he uncomfortable to talk about that part? Was he happy to be like, hey, I was super wrong and
I thought he was. I thought he was lovely.
Yeah, I thought the same.
And humble, and I wouldn't expect him to be so brutally honest about his own experience. He accepted the fact that he fucked up, and I love the line. I'm dean for now, but I'll be deaf forever, and that was his final revelation. I just think that's beautiful. And also when I first asked him, like, honestly, did you ever think the students would win? He just looks and says, no. I mean, most people won't admit that. So I give him a lot of credit for doing the interview, given he doesn't always look so good, and being so honest about his decision, which was almost fatal to the movement. Yeah,
and also, when the back seat, it's like, no, you're coming to the interview, and you do the little recre of like the lock going down. You're like, oh no. It really helped to position us in a way to be in his shoes. Well, hey, I work for this institution. What am I supposed to do now?
We don't talk about this because it just wasn't time, but in the hotel room, it's the four students, it's Zinzer, it's I. King, but there's no interpreter.
Right.
Well, that's amazing when she's talking and you can't.
What are they thinking? Like they're going to have this meeting of the minds and come to some resolution, and they don't send an interpreter. And then they drive him back and there's no interpreter in the car, so he can't even talk. It's
right.
The ignorance is crazy.
It shows that they never really understood in the first place. Zinzer says, listen, I'll learn sign. I'll be fluent in a few weeks and I'll be able to chat with you. But it just goes to show that she could have never understood all the layers and all of the history.
That is my favorite of all, is when you move in on her talking with no sound and she's just talking. And it's just like, wow, they have no idea. And it makes her look, it's obviously Mike and you guys doing it, but it is the perspective, and it shows just how futile the entire exercise was for 120 years of presidents that could not stand in the shoes of deaf people.
Right.
Yeah. But it's interesting, this dynamic of these four leaders who are so at odds. I mean, Jerry wants to be the main guy. I love that there's this inner tension too. And they're just people, they're kids, trying to find their way.
We talked about the four, setting up the four, like the Breakfast Club. and how they're just thrust together, and they don't want to work together, and they're completely at odds with each other, and that they have to kind of find a way to work together.
And you get them in that control room at the end, or whatever that little that little room is. And you shot that actually right there in the freshman dorm. Is that where that took place?
Yeah, we we shot that in the freshman dorm where you see all of the fire alarms. The war room actually is in another place called Old Gym, which used to be the gymnasium. Some place that I went there a lot. The fire alarm scene actually was in the freshman dorm that I lived in at the time. So.
Amazing. Well, I want to make sure that other people have a chance to ask questions. I might come in with a couple, but I'm sure that you all have questions too.
Yeah. There's over 300 different forms of sign language in the world. And, even people in France, I can't understand to save my life. Gallaudet.
Neither can I.
ASL is the primary version of sign language that we use there. But ASL also contains regional accents, similar to the way that you hear somebody from Texas and you immediately know that they're not a Yankee. We can tell by their signs exactly where they come from, which is lovely. Folks from California here have their own accents as well. So yeah, very much of it is regional.
Anyone else?
Yeah. So the third candidate, we don't get into it much at the time. He actually was the superintendent for a deaf school down in Louisiana. And after what happened, he was happy to stay in his position. He continued to serve for many, many other years. But yeah, he was never there actually during the Deaf President Now protest.
And I think, is that right that he pulled out within the week? He said, I'm no longer a candidate, or no? Am I wrong about that?
I don't believe he pulled out. I just believe that they ended up choosing King instead, right? Is that Richard? Is that right? He didn't pull out?
As I said, I'm ignorant.
There in the back?
It's a great question. There's another film out now about Marlee Matlin's life. It's really wonderful, directed by a deaf director named Shoshana Stern. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And they use captions for their dialogue between her and Marlee. And that was one choice. We found in editing that it was super confusing because we had, 5 different characters because we had I. King Jordan, and you're intercutting them. You're intercutting a lot of dialogue over other footage, so you don't see who's talking. And interpreters would change. So you'd have a man doing Greg's voice, and then suddenly it was a woman, and then the same interpreter would do another person. And so we just didn't know how the best way to do it. And so we tried casting actors, and they ended up being just people that we knew. And we just tried it. And it just was a better, in our opinion, way to experience the movie. When you have a scene where, Fight the Power is playing and you're seeing the lyrics of that and 4 different people are talking, it just became a better way for a hearing audience. Now, for a deaf audience, we had our own version, which was with the captions that you see tonight. And that was something that Nyle, led. And we must have done, 20 passes at that. And refined it 100 times just to get it right.
Yeah. And, just to add to that, in terms of the captions and voiceovers, while they normally happen at the same time, there were so many moments within the interviews that we had to cut to some really vital B-roll, right? After providing so much context and so much information, you would have somebody signing and then quickly cutting to a visual. There were so many things that are happening within this film that it can seem very much overwhelming. And we wanted to make sure that we were allowing for every opportunity to understand the context behind the protest as well as the culture. Wanted people to be able to enjoy the archives in a really paced way that made sense and wouldn't overload your brain and cause your eyes to fall out.
It's interesting, Ondi. I don't know what your process. Ondi is one of my favorite documentarians. If you haven't seen Last Flight Home, it's one of my favorite documentaries.
Thank you.
But I don't know how you feel about this. When I direct something, I'm always imagining an audience and where they are in this moment. And that's sort of my true north, right? And for this, we had to imagine two audiences. A hearing audience and where they are in the moment, and a deaf audience and where they are in the moment. And that's sort of a mindfuck to do that, and something I'd never experienced. Have you ever experienced that or no?
No, but I am always explaining to everyone when I'm on set or anywhere. I'm always like, what the audience is going to feel right now.
Right.
The audience needs this right now. You know, it's always from the blue world of the audience.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
But to do that for two audiences is very interesting. And I can see when you explain like, seeing the lyrics and then seeing the captions and having people read instead of looking at the shots, which is a gorgeous film. You know, the archive is so beautiful. And I find that if there's words, I'm reading them. So I actually, I'm really glad you asked that question, because one of my questions that I was going to ask, I had my back pocket, but I was wondering about the casting. Yeah. You know, the voices are just perfect for these characters, I think. And I know.
I wouldn't know. I have no idea.
This is Davis.
That was Davis's department entirely.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. He would send me the voice samples, and then I would grab Gray, my interpreter, and I'd say, "Does this feel like the personality that you see with the ASL?" But that was about the extent of it.
Well, it was just people we knew. Like Timothy Blake Nelson was my housemate at college, so I called him up, and then Leland Orser, we did a TV show together, so anyway, it was just finding
just people that you thought of when you were doing these interviews.
Yeah.
A little bit like just kind of how you do casting. I mean, I always find when I'm casting, you just want to cast somebody who's a lot like the character.
That's right.
Yeah. So, and these characters each one of them is such a character.
Yeah.
I mean, Bridget is just incredible. Bridgetta. And each one of them has their own deep pain and deep hurdles that they came over and got over together in doing this. What are they doing now? Like, where did you find them today when you approached them for this?
So they're all doing amazing things. Greg, for many years, was the head of a department at the FCC. And, we have him working now for a VRS company, which is how deaf people make phone calls. We used to have T2I. Now we have video relay service, which is similar to FaceTime, just on a different scale. We also have Tim, who is the head of another VRS company as well. Jerry set up a really incredible deaf studies program at a state university and is doing absolutely phenomenal. And Bridgetta is semi-retired, has worked at Gallaudet and sort of climbed the ranks, but is still doing great. And they're all still very much advocating in their own way.
And King is just hanging out. He's retired.
He was a celebrated. He was at Gallaudet for 18 years, but was known for running. And he and Bill Clinton would run all around Washington. But actually, one of the reasons why they didn't think a deaf president would work is that the board said, "Well, how are they going to deal with Congress?" Because Congress funded Gallaudet 75%, and it turned out that King was one of the most effective fundraisers in the history of Gallaudet.
Are they on the chopping block with the new administration? Okay.
I don't even want to say it. I don't want to make Gallaudet a target.
By speaking of it in this.
Yeah, I mean
it's in this room,
it's terrifying.
It's terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, I think. There's a lot of conversations going on right now, true to the theme of the film, and sort of how Gallaudet will continue to exist. The great positives is that with Gallaudet's really rich history of great relationships with Congress, they are less of a risk in terms of cuts, but still at risk. And so they're keeping an eye out and fingers crossed that it's all positive. Tons
of state schools, high schools, colleges that are regional schools are really in trouble with the defunding of Department of Education.
And the arts and
everything else. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Before we go down a terrible road, let's ask another question right there. Yes. I'll repeat it. She's thanking Davis and is a huge fan.
No, I think it's Nyle.
Or Nyle. Both.
Okay.
Massive fan of both.
Okay.
What do you hope the film teaches the rest of the industry about accessibility on set?
People always ask me, how do you produce content that does go so deep and, provides the nuance and the layers that it does. And I always say we're able to shine such a lens because we bring deaf people in behind the camera. We had a really fantastic partnership, and we were really excited to be able to work with deaf people across departments on set. We also had a great team of interpreters. And I think that's really what pushes the creativity to the next level, is really when you focus on coming from the community first before telling a story about the community. And I think hiring from within is what allows you the nuance, the authenticity, and the great benefit of being able to make anything, any story that comes out of our community. And it doesn't matter if it's just the deaf community. I'm talking about any marginalized community. It's really important to bring those folks behind the camera.
I just want to say, I think this should be required viewing in every school. And also, I truly, truly do. I think the most important takeaway is the notion that we will help you. We want to help. We'll help you. And the idea that deaf people want to help themselves. These students wanted to be in control. And I think everyone who's growing up needs to understand that nuance, and understand that we will help you is demeaning, is actually not helpful, is not that. And on that note, I want to not forget to say that the film is playing Lemley. When? Soon. Now? No, not
on the 15th.
You guys are getting it first.
On the 15th, is that right?
15th of this month, May 15th.
Yeah.
Yes. And so please tell everybody to go to the movie theater and see this film and support this film. Yeah.
Thank you, Ondi. Thank you for, Ondi's amazing. And she leads this program and invites the most interesting films and filmmakers except for us. And you're just a great filmmaker yourself, and so your questions are so perceptive and thoughtful. And I'm very grateful that you invited us.
I'm a huge fan. So I was like, okay, how does he make movies this fast? Oh, he hooked up with Nyle.
Yeah.
I'm like, he just made Still. How is this happening? But what an incredible gift this film is. And I think we have time for a couple more questions. Anything that you wish you could have included, but you had to cut?
Yeah. So at the heart of the story of Deaf President Now is that fateful line that Spillman is said to deliver, that hearing people or the deaf people can't function, that they're not ready to function in the hearing world. It's told again and again and again in sort of the lore of Deaf President Now. So many people believe that she said it. A few others believe that she didn't. And she believes that she was misunderstood. We had over 40 hours of footage to crawl through. And when I tell you, we scanned every pixel looking for evidence of that line. But it's interesting because throughout that footage, we learned so much about her behavior, about her general approach, and sort of her tone with deaf people. And that, to me, is even more damning. It's quite interesting. Last August, when we had a chance to show the first cut to the 4 student leaders, they were seeing clips that they had never seen before. And many of them felt that sort of fury come back, and while it's very regrettable that we don't actually have that clip, there's so many other incredible ways to illustrate how she felt about deaf people.
She's right out of Central Casting. She is an amazing villain for your film.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
She's just beautiful. Yes. Is she still alive to know how awful?
She is. She's alive.
She's going to be a big fan of this film. She's going to go hide under a rock.
I've heard that she is up there, but I'm not sure where she
up there. Yeah.
I think West Virginia.
She's in her 90s. Yeah. I grew up in Washington D.C. and there was all these commercials for Bassett Furniture, and her name was Jane Bassett Spillman, and she owned this. Her family owned this huge factory, a furniture factory, and so she was just this patrician, rich person who owned 3 houses.
Right there.
Thank you.
A comment that the recrees are incredible, which I think there's no question, just praise. Right? Okay. Any last question? We have one last. Yep, right there.
Ooh, that's a really tough one. I'd have to say probably Children of a Lesser God. First, obviously. It's a fantastic film. I think it's beautifully shot. I think it's creatively very well done. I also think it really inspired so much of our film. So yeah, I'd have to go with Children of a Lesser God. That wins for me.
I have to say one more thing about Spillman. Her resignation speech is amazing.
Amazing.
It's amazing. And she really did. I mean, it's like she had a speechwriter or something. Like she changed, she turned. King turned, and so did she. She really admitted it. She ate crow on that, you know?
I've become an obstacle. I'm going to remove that obstacle. I actually feel like that her whole, it feels like a PR firm.
Yeah, it must have written.
Pushed her, the whole thing, the whole week was steering them in the absolute wrong direction and how they handled it.
But you think that was actually legitimately her talking at the end, or do you think that was also just written by the PR firm?
It feels to me like, not to knock PR people, RJ, but not to single you out, RJ. We love you, RJ. But when you hear the words that they said from beginning to end, it was crafted in very, blind.
I was shocked. I was like, wow, she learned a lot this week.
Yeah.
She really did. Anyway, look. Oh, okay. One last, really quick. Yes. I mean, it seemed like there was there any threat of police getting involved or the military? It seemed like it almost went there when they lit the puppet on
there
fire.
were police. There certainly were police, and there was a very high danger of arrest. There's actually one part in the clip where you see somebody come out and they say, according to DC police, you will be arrested. It definitely was a threat. But I think, they didn't really make any arrests. I think it was more for the intimidation of their force in numbers, but we got lucky, I think.
How can we support this film besides going to the Lemley and telling everybody?
Oh, it's a challenging time to release a movie, any kind of movie right now,
yes.
And especially a movie that doesn't have a big movie star. So if you like it, tell people. And it's a special movie to see in a theater because for all, hearing it with the sound design properly. And but it's a challenge. So if you like it, tell someone.
Thank you both for making it.
Ondi,
and thank you for coming to the DGA. And
thank you so much, Ondi. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. The Director's Cut is available wherever you listen to podcasts. And please share, subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America.